Do beginners need weightlifting shoes? This is an incredibly nuanced topic that I'm going to try to keep as simple as possible in this video. And keep in mind, like, I'm the shoe guy. I'm a huge believer in using the right footwear for the right job. But at the end of the day, I don't think everybody needs weightlifting shoes, especially beginners. And let me explain why that's the case and when you should potentially think about investing in a pair. Okay, so before I talk through two things to consider for beginners with weightlifting shoes, I do want to clarify, if you are a beginner getting into the sport of weightlifting and you plan to compete, you are going to be a different case here for your weightlifting shoes. They're going to be a lot more pertinent for you to have based on the context of your sport and the demands of it. So you are going to be separate in this, you're in a different category. For everybody else, when talking about investing in your first pair of weightlifting shoes, there are two things that I typically like to cover. Number one, have you understood what your squat mechanics are like when you are in your normal training shoes and when being barefoot before opting for weightlifting shoes? So what I mean by this is I think it can be counterproductive for a beginner to slap on a heel elevation right away before even understanding how their body responds to different types of squats and different types of foot positions when squatting. When you elevate your heel, for example, and when you have a flatter foot position, your mechanics will change. Your ranges of motion will change, your joint mechanics will change, and your form will change. And so if you're a beginner and you jump straight to a heel elevation, that's what you're going to learn, but that's not necessarily going to be the most productive to create carryover across different training needs and sports and whatnot. So if you play recreational sports, for example, or if you are getting into other forms of training, it can be a good idea to start with having your normal training shoe on or going barefoot, learning the foundational squat mechanics with that, and then potentially exploring heel elevation as you start to find thresholds where your form starts to break down or when you start to get more specific with your training. So for example, let's say you've been training for 4 to 6 months and you've been squatting regularly, you normally use your training shoes or you normally go barefoot, and you notice at a certain weight, you start to collapse forward and you do high bar squats typically, or let's say front squats. In that context, a weightlifting shoe can make a lot of sense to invest in because it's going to allow you to progress without having major form breakdown, and you've already built up that foundation of understanding what it's like to squat with flatter foot positions. So basically, I think it'd be more productive to learn how to squat barefoot or with your traditional training shoes and then learn the mechanics of what those entail and then explore heel elevation. I think that's going to give you a much better foundation and knowledge of knowing how your body is going to respond to different foot positions. And this is especially true for any of my folks out there who like to do cross training, CrossFit, or like to do recreational sports where you are going to be squatting in different types of contexts. The second thing that I try to language with beginners is you don't necessarily need to go spend right away on a pair of weightlifting shoes, especially if you're just beginning. So if you have a wedge in your gym or if you have a plate, you can easily elevate your heel under a training shoe. If you go barefoot, it can feel a bit uncomfortable in time, so keep that in mind. But you can go a long way without having to spend more money on more gear in the gym. Now, I do think there will come a point in which you will get heavy enough and you'll get more experience to where you will want more surface area under your foot. And that's why I do like weightlifting shoes over, for example, elevating your heels on plates, because you will get more surface area. Wedges also work, but the problem with wedges is you're kind of static and you're fixed. You can't really bring them with you to different movements. For example, if you want to use a weightlifting shoe on a leg press, you can't really do that with a wedge. And there is a context where you might want to do that, and I have filmed a video talking about weightlifting shoes on machines, and that's going to be up there. But all that to say, the two things that I like to tell beginners when they are considering buying weightlifting shoes is, number one, do you have a good enough foundation of understanding of your squat mechanics in general before putting yourself into a heel elevated position? And then number two, do you need to spend the money right now? If you have the money, go for it. But at the end of the day, don't feel like you need to be pressured into spending and buying more when you can get away with using simple stuff already in your gym. All right, guys, hopefully this video makes sense. I have been asked this question so many times on weightlifting shoe videos. I wanted to film a standalone video and discuss how I feel about beginners investing in weightlifting shoes, do they need to do it, etc., and how I like to approach it from my coaching background. Now, I know some coaches will disagree with my point of views, and that is perfectly fine, but if you do want to learn more about squatting with a flat and heel elevated position, I have filmed a video on that. I'm going to link that up there. Again, I'm not going to dive into the mechanics here. If you're watching this all the way through, you're likely a beginner, and I do not want to overwhelm you because I very easily could with all the nuance that goes into this. But what I would suggest is keep it simple. Build a strong foundation, understand how your body responds to different foot positions. That way you'll be way better equipped for all the things that life is gonna throw at you. And if you do need to learn more about weightlifting shoes, I also have a guide that's linked up there, but you can always ask me questions, and then you can drop a comment down below to do so, or hit me on Instagram, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.